Death Parade is great. In this video, I'm going to judge every judgment from Death Parade, because that's what I do anyway when I watch the series. 14 people are judged over 8 cases during the course of the show. I will be spoiling the entire anime, so please go watch Death Parade first if you haven't seen it. Feel free to judge my judging of the judgments in the comments section. Case 1. Machiko and Takashi. The first case is a game of darts played by newlyweds Machiko and Takashi. Each region of the dartboard is connected to a body part of the other player, and they will feel pain there if that region is hit. Everyone who comes to this bar has already passed away, but their memories have been erased. They each play a game during which they slowly recover their memories and reveal what type of person they are. When Machiko and Takashi realize that Decim was telling the truth about the dartboard causing them pain, Decim tells them that they could just deliberately miss with their throws until all the darts are gone, so this is what they start to do. However, Takashi realizes that Machiko will win if things keep going like this, and he thinks back to the fake bodies that Decim showed them to scare them into playing the game. Takashi takes careful aim at Machiko's board and deliberately hits a part of her. Then he apologizes to his wife and claims that his hand slipped. When Machiko throws her next dart, she hits the portion of the board that's connected to Takashi's eye. I'm pretty sure this was an accident, but Takashi thinks that she did it on purpose, since that's exactly what he just did. He looks pretty hell-bent on taking revenge with his next throw, but Machiko tells him not in the belly, implying that she's pregnant with Takashi's child. Takashi is elated to find out that he's going to be a father, but in the middle of his next throw, he has a flashback to a conversation he overheard at the wedding. 2 women in the bathroom are talking about someone named Machi, and they're admiring her scheming ability to marry a doctor and keep a man on the side. Takashi assumes that they're talking about Machiko, but Machiko later claims that they were talking about a different classmate who also married a doctor. Takashi goes to grab Machiko when he realizes that the baby might be his, but he accidentally stabs her in the shoulder with the dart that he's holding. Machiko grabs the dart and angrily moves to make the final throw, but Takashi grabs her clothing and pulls down her arm. The dart flies to the center of the board and hits the bullseye, which is Takashi's heart. He falls to the floor, and Decim claps as he announces Machiko as the winner. Once someone wins the game at this bar, the 2 players are then judged and sent into elevators marked for heaven or hell. Though we later learn that heaven means that their soul gets reincarnated, and hell means that their soul is cast into the void, never to be used again. Decim escorts the pair to their final elevators. Takashi is going to heaven, and Machiko is going to hell, and this made me so confused the first time I saw this show. It's true that Decim believes Machiko's lie about having a drawn-out affair at the end, so that's probably why he sends her to the void. But what did Takashi do to reserve reincarnation? Getting cheated on sends him to heaven? Here's my judgment. Takashi does not give us a very flattering picture of himself during the dart game. He shows us that he has multiple trust issues and accuses his wife of having an affair. He deliberately throws his dart at Machiko's board and then lies about it when he realizes that she is going to win the game. And he's always thinking about only himself. I have Machiko. I'm going to be a father. I can't lose this game. He shows us almost no redeeming qualities. Machiko's no saint either. She shows a bit of a temper when Takashi stabs her in the shoulder, and it looks like she did have a one-night stand with another guy, though she appears to feel awful about it afterwards. However, she also seems to have been genuinely in love with Takashi. Chiyuki later suggests that Machiko lied about the child not being Takashi's to lessen his grief over losing that child, even if it caused him to hate her. Machiko seems like a regular human who can make mistakes, but who can also sacrifice for others. But Takashi had such a selfish and resentful nature that it is unlikely he would have ever found happiness. Decim is 0 for 2 to start out, in my opinion, which is a pretty easy call to make since it's basically canon in the show that he made a mistake with that first case. Case number 2, Shigeru and Chisato. In episode 3, 2 more people enter the bar. Shigeru remembers being on a bus on his way back from college. The girl remembers nothing, including her own name, which turns out to be a pretty crucial part of this story. The game that is selected for them is bowling, except they only get to roll 1 ball per frame, and they have to use these creepy balls that have copies of their hearts inside. Shigeru asks the girl to make a wager that if he wins, she will go on a date with him. We see her inner thoughts that she's surprised and happy by his request, but we never see her say yes. From what we see, it's like he asks her out and then she just says nothing and keeps bowling. And I'm sorry, but that means she's going straight into the hell elevator. You can't just leave a guy hanging like that. She even notices how fast his heart is pounding and just calmly throws his heart at the bowling pins like nothing happened. At least later she says that she was distracted because she was so happy. While she throws the ball, the girl has a flashback of herself working in the bowling alley as Shigeru is there with a couple of his friends. Later she remembers playing with Shigeru at the park as a child and says her name is Chisato Miyazaki. The two of them used to play together along with a third girl named Mai. The big twist, of course, is that Chisato is actually Mai trying to adopt the other girl's identity. When she wasn't able to grab Shigeru's attention as a child, she decided to have plastic surgery later on to change her looks. Halfway through the episode, Decim shocks Chiyuki by telling her about Mai's identity switch, though they hide it from the viewer. I always like this way of building up suspense for the plot twist. During his last role, Shigeru remembers his friends at the bowling alley telling him about Mai's plastic surgery. We also see him stand up on the bus and head to where Mai is, possibly to confront her about her identity. He then remembers the truck that crashes through the front of the bus, ending their lives. To his credit, after thinking for a moment, he still celebrates his win with Mai at the bar. As Mai gutters her last ball, she remembers her surgical procedure and that she is not Chisato. Shigeru asks her out a second time anyway, telling Mai that he knows everything and that he still wants to be with her as long as he can, which is probably one of the most stand-up things that anyone does in the show. The two have their date and both enter elevators with a Buddhist mask above them. This is an easy case to judge, and it's probably meant to show that not all of the cases have to be doom and gloom, because pretty much all the other cases are doom and gloom, except for the grandma. 2 for 2 on this one. Both of them belong in that reincarnation elevator. So Decim is now 2 for 4 overall. Case number 3, Yosuke and Misaki. Misaki is an aging actress who still has her looks, but is finding it hard to hold on to them, and she's very aware of that fact. Yosuke is a young man who happened to die at the same time. When Misaki is told the strange rules of the Quindecim bar, she thinks that she's being punked by a hidden camera show, and asks Yosuke to play along. The game they're choosing to play is an arcade fighting game called Battle of Life. After Yosuke wins the first round, we see Misaki's flashback where she relives her abusive first marriage and falls into an abusive second relationship. At that point, she already has at least 4 kids. Misaki convinces Yosuke to throw the second round to set up a dramatic conclusion, and he goes along with it. At this point, Decim reveals the existence of his magic clicker of fate thingy, which he can use to throw a wrench into the game if things are going too smoothly. Yosuke starts to win the second round until Decim uses his clicker and the head of Yosuke's joystick pops off. Misaki uses her bubble dream attack to secure the KO and win the round. At this point, we get a flashback of Yosuke's life. His mom emotionally abuses him as a young child, and then his parents get divorced. His dad remarries a kind-hearted woman who tries to fill that void of love and acceptance that Yosuke was missing, but he seems to resent her for taking his mom's place, and he never warms up to her. Yosuke becomes depressed as a teenager and ends up taking his own life, which is how he shows up at the bar. In another flashback, Misaki verbally berates one of her assistants, repeating that cycle of abuse that she's been a part of so often. The assistant seethes with resentment and strangles Misaki, which is how she got to the bar. During the third round, Decim uses his clicker again, and this time the top of Misaki's joystick pops off, and it looks like Yosuke is going to win. But just at that moment, we hear these bashing noises and see Misaki brutally slamming Yosuke's head into the arcade machine again and again. Once she's put Yosuke out of commission, she returns to her machine and listlessly pushes the same button over and over to finish the contest. Yosuke regains consciousness, however, and both players start yelling and rushing at each other in the game. When they collide, both players are knocked out, and the game ends in a draw. In the elevators, Yosuke is sent to heaven, and Misaki is sent to hell. Here's my judgment. This one is pretty straightforward. Misaki basically commits attempted murder at the end of the game, so the void seems like the right choice for her. I suppose for some people, Yosuke's suicide might complicate things, since I know that in some religious traditions, those who commit suicide are sent to hell. But that's not my tradition. I would love to see Yosuke get a second shot at life and try to pay back some of that love that he ignored in his first life. And that is the chance that he gets at the end. Decim is 2 for 2 in this case, bringing his overall total to 4 out of 6. Case number 4, Mayu and Haruta. In case 4, we get to see Ginti pass judgment. The pair that will play the game is Mayu, a high school girl with a slightly flashy sense of fashion, and Haruta, a somewhat world-weary member of a popular boy band. Mayu comes across as a normal teenage girl meeting her celebrity crush, while Haruta is able to put on a practiced smile and act his part as an idol perfectly, even if we also get that countercurrent of his thoughts that lets us know that he's quite dismissive of Mayu. Ginti, of course, is a jerk from beginning to end. They play a game of Twister where the room becomes hot or cold or extremely windy based on what color they have to touch. After the game gets going, Ginti grows impatient and drops the floor out from the contestants to reveal a pit of spikes below them. Haruta absolutely seems like he's about to push Mayu off the edge into the pit of spikes before she announces that she wants to drop out of the contest. Once Mayu decides to sacrifice herself by falling into the pit, Haruta thinks back on another fan that he disappointed who ended up killing herself, and he reaches his hand out to keep Mayu from falling. Also, the ice freezes Haruta's clothes off. How does that work? Anyway, Haruta can't hold on forever, and Mayu falls towards the spikes. Lucky for her, the spikes aren't real. At the end of the episode, the two kids get to hang around and annoy Ginti, which is a win for everyone. Reincarnation elevators all around is how it should have gone. What's weird is that this is the case that Ginti can't make a judgment on. It seems like a pretty simple one. I think what's throwing him off is Mayu's altruistic behavior because she's willing to sacrifice herself and he just can't understand that. But even before that, I would have put her in the heaven elevator and her heroic sacrifice would just confirm that. But Ginti keeps her around the bar for some reason, even after he sends Haruta off into the void, which has to be one of the worst decisions in the show. I'm pretty sure the only thing he was guilty of was a little fake show business behavior, some womanizing, and a tacky breakup. So Ginti is a pretty tough grader. Plus, didn't he redeem himself by trying to save Mayu at the end? Also, you're really going to sit there and watch a man give you a free concert and then coldly look him in the eye as he descends into the elevator. That is cold-blooded, even for Ginti. 0 for 1 on Haruta. That guy should have been reincarnated. Mayu, however, is a really strange case. In episode 11, Ginti tells her that she can bring Haruta's soul back, but to do so, Ginti must send another soul into the void to replace it. He then asks Maya to choose between Haruta's soul or a stranger's soul to be selected for the void. She offers her own soul in exchange, which baffles Ginti again, but her ultimate decision is to push the button that sends the other guy to hell. Mayu is shown holding Haruta's puppet body in the elevator as Ginti sees her off. The elevator closes and we see that she's being sent to the void. Here's my judgment. Up to this point, it seems clear that Mayu's soul should have been destined for reincarnation. But this last-minute decision to replace another person in the void so that Haruta can live does qualify her for the void. I do feel as though Ginti put Mayu in a near impossible situation. She's supposed to be judged as a human, not as a human with the powers of a god. Perhaps her selfish decision just means that she's not fit to be a god, not that she's unfit to continue to be a human. Plus, Haruta never should have been put in the void in the first place. It feels like Ginti kept prodding at Mayu until he got the judgment that he wanted. But I can't deny that his methods did ultimately reveal the darkness in Mayu's soul. I'm going to begrudgingly give Ginti credit for one correct judgment in Mayu's case, but I still think he was wrong to send Haruta into the void. So Ginti is 1 for 2, barely, and the arbiters are a combined 5 for 8 in my book. Case number 5, Man and Woman. This episode starts by showing us a judgment from Quin, back when she was the arbiter of Quindecim. It's Decim and Ginti's final walkthrough before becoming full-time arbiters, and since this is a flashback, we don't get much of the case, just a few shots here and there. But is this video called Judging Almost Every Judgment in Death Parade? No, it's Judging Every Judgment. So here we go. We've got a couple of people, a man and a woman, and they're playing pool. Some of you hardcore fans will already know that Death Parade as a series was expanded from a one-episode animated concept called Death Billiards. So this flashback is a nod to the anime's origination, though the character designs are quite different. We get no dialogue, but we are shown that the young woman goes to heaven while the man goes to hell. Is this fair? Probably. The guy does sweat during the game, so he's probably guilty about something. He's also holding his face in his hand at the end, so perhaps he made some unflattering realizations about himself. Or maybe he's just upset about going to hell, But the woman also looks pretty guilty in that elevator. Did she look into the darkness of her soul and learn to fear the demon within? Did she cheat her way through the billiards game and come away scot-free while consigning a man's soul to the eternal void? I'm going to say yes. Elevators for both of them. Looks like Quin got one right and one wrong here. Possibly. 6 out of 10 for the arbiters. Okay, fine. 7 out of 10. We'll give Quin the benefit of the doubt. Case number 6, Tatsumi and Shimada. In this case, Tatsumi and Shimada play air hockey. Tatsumi is a middle-aged detective, and Shimada is a 22-year-old who works to support himself and his sister Sai. Both men have links to criminal cases. Tatsumi's wife was killed, and Shimada's sister was sexually assaulted. They are both determined to win the game, to get revenge on the person who wronged them by killing them, and they admit this openly to each other. During the air hockey game, Shimada remembers that he had already killed one of the assaulters, and he also remembers that Sai told him that there were 2 of them, one of whom turns out to be Tatsumi watching from the shadows. Tatsumi remembers that he also killed his wife's killer. I will say that Shimada seems to demonstrate more humanity during the game. However, he is guilty of 2 murders. The detective, on the other hand, tries to push Shimada towards a second act of revenge and hints that he has committed many murders of vengeance. Shimada wins the air hockey game, but at the end, Tatsumi remembers the moment of his death. He was investigating Sai's case when he stumbled onto the body of the first abuser, who Shimada had killed. Shimada stabbed Tatsumi, thinking that he was the second perpetrator, but he was tracking the abuser and waiting for definitive proof of his crime before he could kill him, and there was no second perpetrator. Tatsumi seems like a psychopath who clearly deserves the void. The show gives Shimada a choice to inflict massive amounts of pain on Tatsumi since he cannot die a second time. Chiyuki tries her best to stop Shimada, and the show tries to set you up for Shimada to heed her warnings and have a change of heart, but he doesn't. He plunges the knife through the tokens that bear images of Tatsumi's organs. Most every other show would have had Shimada have a change of heart, but I think this ending is true to his actual nature. Refusing violence and revenge would have been Chiyuki's judgment, not Shimada's. He was about to plunge the knife 2 times before she stopped him, and in the end he followed the path that was true to the darkness within him. Both men are sent to the void, and this is the judgment that I would have given as well. 2 for 2 in this case, which makes 9 out of 12 overall. Case number 7, Sachiko Uemara. In the second to last case, an old woman shows up alone, not in a pair, which is supposedly how all the guests of the bar are supposed to arrive. Although in the flashbacks, it appears as though this is how Chiyuki arrived at the bar as well. I think this new guest is intended to complete the pair with Chiyuki so that she can receive her final judgment as well. The older woman's name is Sachiko Uemara, and she's an illustrator, although she did not draw the illustrations for Chabo. The game that they play is Old Maid. This time, Decim does not tell her to put her life on the line, nor does he review her memories beforehand. Mrs. Uemara's memories come back to her during the game, and then Chiyuki's start to come back as well. She remembers her own name and her mother. Mrs. Uemara is of course sent to the reincarnation elevator because she represents all kind grannies everywhere. Good job, Decim. You didn't send the sweetest granny in Japan off to hell. Chiyuki should be following her to the reincarnation elevator in my opinion, but she stays behind so that we can close out the story with a couple of more episodes. Decim is 1 for 1 in this case, and the arbiters are 10 out of 13 overall with 1 more case to go. Case number 8, Chiyuki. Chiyuki finds a figure skater's costume in her closet, along with a pair of skates, and Decim somehow arranges for an ice rink in his bar. As Chiyuki skates, flashbacks of her life come back to her, mostly happy ones that involve her mom and skating. But when she goes up for one last jump, she remembers the devastating knee injury that ended her skating career. Chiyuki remembers being in the hospital where she shows signs of a deep depression, though she herself doesn't understand what is happening to her. Her mental illness also cuts her off from understanding others, and she becomes more and more isolated. Chiyuki continues through some of the classic patterns of depression until she tragically takes her own life. When her puppet body chips along her wrist, this is a reference to the manner in which she died. It seems like Chiyuki's case would be an easy one to judge. Who doesn't like Chiyuki? If you consider her actions during all the games as well, she demonstrates quite a bit of humanity, such as arguing on behalf of various contestants and trying to save Shimada from becoming consumed with rage. Perhaps the difficulty is that if she rejected a life that was this blessed and relatively free of hardship other than her skating injury, then she might be at risk of discarding any other life she was given at the slightest hint of adversity. Still, I would have a hard time saying that we need fewer Chiyukis around, and I'd want to see her soul get a second chance. Anyway, Decim gives Chiyuki a similar opportunity to the one that Ginti gave to Mayu. If she pushes a button, she can return to life, but she would have to cast someone else into the void in exchange. Unlike Mayu, who acted selfishly in that situation, Chiyuki rejects that opportunity and preserves her chance at reincarnation. Although she's lucky we're not rounding up that button push because that's a full press. But officially, she doesn't push the button, so we gotta let it slide. In the elevator, as Chiyuki leaves, we get confirmation that she will be reincarnated by the mask above the door. The show ends and we see creepy puppet Chiyuki sitting next to Decim like the world's strangest taxidermy doll. 2 more people do enter the bar, but since they're never judged, our work is done. Decim is 1 for 1 on Chiyuki, which brings the total for the judgments of the show up to 11 out of 14 correct in my estimation. Percentage-wise, that's a C+, but that's pretty good considering we started out with a deliberate 0 for 2. So let me know which judgments you would have done differently. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.